Hello and welcome to Talking F1. We're a podcast from GP Grandstand that does pretty much that. We talk about F1 more specifically. That means Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and the W Series. I'm your host Jim Kimberley and I'm also joined again with full house, Gareth Winslade, Thiemo Daly and Jacob Phillips in a very special episode where we are going to be talking not F1 but specifically about a Formula 1 rookie this year, causing headlines throughout the off-season and continuing to do so through the season so far. That is, of course, Nikita Mazepin, Haas's driver. Now, everybody here got a Formula 2 interest, would have seen Nikita racing in Formula 2 last year. Gareth, are we expecting more of this to come based off of his aggressive drives through Formula 2?
Yes. It's not going to stop and
podcast
it's only
over.
going to get worse. The thing is, Nikita Mazepin is a quick driver. There's no, he is fast. We know that, but is he fast enough to warrant beating someone like Callum Ilott to the grid? I don't think he is. And is his record enough to warrant being on the grid? Yeah, maybe. But we know he's there because of his money. But also, we're seeing the poorer side and the negative aspect of his character coming through way too often, and it's he's in danger of bringing the sport into disrepute, in my opinion.
Wow, harsh words. What in particular that you are putting for disrepute there?
Well, if we go back into his previous history, we've got in Formula 3 where he punched Ilott in the face because there was a disagreement over track space, and he went and sought out Ilott and just lamped him in the face. He got a one race ban for it, but there's no, drivers should not be hitting each other for something that happens on track. We saw that with Ocon and Verstappen. I think Verstappen got away lightly with that as well, probably because he's one of F1's biggest draws. But then all through his F2 seasons, there's countless episodes and examples where he drove really aggressively and really pushing the limits in terms of like running people off the road and things like that. And then he's done four Grand Prix. He's had an incident every single qualifying session to date. He's got 2 points on his super license in only 4 races. If he gets to 12, he's got a ban. So that's half the season we're looking at, and he's probably going to get banned. So for me, and then he blocked Lewis in Barcelona, and I think that's not the first incident we've seen of him in the actual races as well. So for me,
incident, of course, didn't we? Portugal.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, again, where ignoring blue flags, got a 5-second penalty for that. Didn't seem to have learnt his lesson, considering he then was blocking Lewis in Barcelona doing just exactly the same thing the following race.
Thiemo, do you want to add on to this? Any points of defence or any points for the prosecution?
Defence. That's funny. No, it's. I'm just agreeing with everything Gareth is saying. To be honest, if we take the blue flag for example as one of the things that he's just completely messing up on, it's not like this is a new concept for him that it's just exclusively in Formula 1. It's in all pretty much more or less racing categories that you're in, and it's not a difficult thing to do, and there's plenty of places on every track where you can get out of the way. Monaco may be an exception, but even then, it's still, we'll see how that one goes when he's inevitably shown the blue flags there, but it's just a complete disregard for basic rules and track etiquette. Again, with the Ilott thing, it shouldn't have even got to that stage. It's the kind of thing like you can disagree with someone as much as you like, but just you're on like an international stage, and you need to be acting a certain way and being a certain level of maturity, and he's just shown none of that, and has proven to not learn from his mistakes either, because he keeps cocking up in various different ways, which alter different degrees of ridiculous badness each time. So the stuff in the off-season alone after he was announced as a Haas driver, we all know what happened there, and you think, at what point was that? You think, oh yes, this is a good idea, I'll do this, because it's never gone badly for me before. And if he was a good driver, in the sense that, well, he was just a good driver, to be honest. I mean, he's done it all right before in F2 and F3, but even then, I don't think it's enough to warrant an F1C personally. But even if he was like Max Verstappen kind of skill behind the wheel, it's still no excuse for the off-track behaviour. I mean, you take Yuki as an example. This past weekend, he's not been the best behaved with some of the stuff he's been saying, but he looks like an absolute angel in comparison. You can forgive him for those things when you compare him to someone like Mazepin. And it's just like, yeah, so as if it's not a matter of if he gets the 12 points, I think on his license, a matter of when. And at that point, you've got to really reassess, okay, has anyone ever got them that quickly before? And maybe we want to do something better and don't want to be just in it for the money, because clearly I don't think it's worth it. And you miss out on much more talented people, like Callum, for example. And I mean, he was fifth, in Formula 2 last year. I think he was Lundgaard in fourth, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly. Two perfectly good drivers who, if you're basing it off performance, deserve it a lot more than he does. So I don't see any defense for it, to be honest.
I think I remember you saying, Thiemo, that you don't like sitting on fences because they're uncomfortable, and certainly not sitting on a fence there. Jacob, we have seen that he's capable of winning Formula 2 races, and he is quick. I don't know if we've seen any of that speed this year, and it's difficult with a barometer of Mick Schumacher being a fellow rookie. Is Mick exceptionally good? Is he a generational talent that's come through, or is Nikita just that slow? Do we know that yet?
Well, first of all, slightly in his defence, that that Haas car really isn't good. But I'm looking through the qualifying results this morning, and I think the closest he's got to Mick is, I think, 5/10 off in Imola, and the other times I think been 8/10 off in Bahrain and 7/10 off there in Barcelona. So I don't think we have seen the true speed from Nikita. Do you know, I'm actually a little bit surprised. I might be coming to his defence slightly here, and that might be going against the grain of what we've heard earlier from the other two guys. But I thought his F2 results, although he finished fifth in the championship, weren't bad. He won in Mugello last year, won in Silverstone as well, and nearly won in Spa, and they're fairly hard circuits to master. So he did very well there. Going back to his Formula 3 days as well, he was in the ART, which was the standout car in the field that year in 2018. But he did finish above Callum Ilott in the same car, and people forget that.
Do you think then people have been a bit too harsh, a bit too quick to judge? He's 4 races into his career, and we've seen at Imola that Mick Schumacher made a mistake. We've seen Yuki Tsunoda make a mistake at the same race as well. Are people now jumping onto the Mazepin, we say no to Mazepin, hate train a bit too eagerly? Are we looking at him with what's the opposite of rose-tinted glasses, with hateful glasses, that every single mistake is under extra scrutiny, do you think, Jacob?
I don't think there's an element of that. Obviously, we can't defend his behaviour off track. It's abhorrent. Obviously, we've mentioned before there punching Ilott a few years ago, and that abhorrent Instagram post that went up just before the start of this season. So we can't defend that. But a lot of people that are criticising him will not have watched his performance in F2. So, but you can only judge him on what we've seen so far in the 4 races in terms of his F1 career. And yeah, to be fair, I echo the thoughts of Thiemo and Gareth. It's not been good enough. He's made mistake after mistake. He's spinning every session. There's even a website created. When was the last time Mazepin spun? So that's quite funny. But I think the barometer is this year going to be Schumacher, because maybe Latifi, obviously Russell and the Alfa Romeos are much further up the road. So we've got to judge him to Schumacher, and the results don't lie. This season, not regarding obviously what he's done in the past, but this season, yeah, it's just not been good enough in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you have to remember.
Go on, you go and go.
Well, I was going to say as well, you had to remember that Schumacher is always been a 2-season driver. He's he always takes 1 season to get up to speed in the category he's joining. We saw that in European F3, and then we saw it in F2, where he was nowhere in 2019, and then title contender and absolutely the most consistent driver in the field in F2 last season, unquestionably. And Mazepin is getting beaten, like you say, Jacob, by 0.8 of a second in a single lap by a driver who is only going to be quicker next season. So that's worrying. I mean, that could be that unless Mazepin steps it up, we're looking at over a second potentially between the two. And at that point, you just had to think, well, surely he's going down. He should be UGE'd out as a sport, where they just take away his super license.
I was going to say as well, just going off what Jacob's saying, is coming to a slight defense with, okay, yes, the Haas is a terrible car, but it doesn't help then Mick doing as well as he is in the car. And I mean, okay, yes, Mick's a great driver, but even though he won the championship last year, he still had a lot of races where I wasn't as impressed with him as I thought he was going to be. He did enough to hook up enough results over the course of the season to win the championship, but I still wouldn't have thought he was like he set the world on fire in F2 in that sense. But he's still proven to be a much better driver this year in the same machinery, and we've seen it with other teams with bad cars before. And so, say like George Russell in the Williams. Okay, it was still a terrible car a couple of years ago and last year and a bit this year, but he's still managing to get the maximum out of it. And then I think as well of Alonso with McLaren, terrible car towards the end, but he was still managing to get a lot of decent for what it is results out of it. And Mick's just absolutely blowing him away on that one. And the longer that goes on for, which all season is going to be my bet, then it's just how long can it go for Haas to say, yeah, but we've got money, so it's all right, and we'll just keep him. And what does that do for F1 as the reputation? It was bad enough when you get the likes of Stroll and Latifi coming in. And granted, Stroll and Latifi, they've got some results to back it up as well, so it's not like they don't have any driving talent. And Stroll has stepped up a bit considerably last year as well. But it's the whole thing of where do you draw the line with the paid drivers? Because yes, you need the money to come into it, but you don't want to end up having 20 drivers like that on the grid where they're just there because they managed to buy their way in rather than getting in on pure talent. And
yeah, ceases to be a brilliant champion.
When you look at someone like Ocon, who had to scrape together all the money possible to just get the chance to be there in the first place, and then ended up having to have a season off to then come back. We criticise him a bit, but all things considered, he's doing fairly well. And you don't want to lose someone like that where you can see the talent growing over some time then, where they're already a decent driver just because someone else has managed to buy their way in. And you've got to think, with all his off-track activities, how much of that would he have gotten away with if he didn't have Daddy's money to back him up?
Totally.
It's a difficult one to really know because I've seen some of the incidents mentioned in Formula 2 and to the point, accidental, who knows, when I think he almost hit somebody with the little barrier things that go in front of the winning drivers, just driving a bit too aggressively. Sonoda, yes. And then almost what could have been a fatal incident or a very bad incident in Bahrain last year. I think it was with Sonoda as well, when he was very, very aggressive on the brakes or on his defense going down the pit straight. But all that aside, the off-track antics, are we in a position where abhorrent, perfect word, Jacob, what's happened with that? And it happened not long after the driver announcement, as far as I remember. And then Formula One fans have been stewing over this all off season to really, as insidious as Twitter and social media can be like, yeah, we say no to Mazepin. That hashtag's just going to go and go and go for three, almost 4 months before Formula One returns. Was everybody predisposed to dislike this guy based off of that, Jacob? And the fans who are coming to Formula One or seeing Mazepin in Formula One for the first time, were they going to dislike him no matter what?
I think there will be an element of that, but from what he's done, it's certainly a reason to hate him. I do think that F1 were, very, very much sitting on the fence with this one. Obviously with the whole We Race One campaign, they're trying to stamp out these kind of things. They're promoting, women in F1, and that's certainly the FIA. There's a FIA Women in Motorsport program that's being championed at the moment. So I think F1 just left Haas to deal with it internally, and obviously Haas, unfortunately, they need the money, so I think their hands were tied there. But I think people will there will be people jumping on the bandwagon, but rightfully so, in my opinion. You can hate him for his his antics on track, like we saw, you mentioned earlier there, with nearly pushing Sonoda in the wall. But certainly, I think you can hate him for what he's done off track. It's, like I said before, abhorrent.
It's the kind of thing with the when you become an F1 driver. I mean, not that you would get away with acting like this in F2 or F3 or anything else, but when you're F1, it's like I've brought up on the notion that it's the best 20 drivers or 20 of the best drivers in the world, and that they're based on their skill and their driving ability. And you're on an international stage. You're traveling around the world for what 9-10 months a year, and you're representing your country and you're representing your team and everyone, and you've got to behave in a certain way to not just professional, but just being decent, so that because you're being looked at by so many people, and you've got to think, even if you don't know about what he did off track before you watch this season, you're going to find out pretty quickly, because it's social media. It's very rare you're going to find someone new coming to the sport who isn't going to check this out later. Oh, I wonder why he's getting all this hate, and then you discover, oh, okay, fair enough then. So it just kind of tarnishes the whole "we races one" thing. I do find it a bit hypocritical that he's in that video, considering it doesn't seem like he's doing anything to work towards that. And Haas dealing with it internally was a bit of a, oh, so they've done nothing essentially, because if they'd done something, what would be wrong with issuing a press statement saying what they'd done to discipline him? It would be an easy way to try and put out some of the fire that they'd caused. And instead, Haas just didn't do anything, and the FIA didn't do anything, which I think was really bad as well. So it just kind of brings everything down a level and tarnishes F1 as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Go on, Jacob.
Sorry, Gareth, do you want to go? I didn't see this weekend, actually. I didn't see it in person myself. I did see a few things on Twitter. Apparently, Mazepin took the knee this weekend. Did anyone see that?
I didn't see him take it. I thought he was standing for what I saw, but I could be wrong.
Okay, maybe I made a mistake, but I did see someone on Twitter saying Mazepin took the knee, but maybe he didn't.
The thing with the taking the knee element is that we've seen a lot of the drivers not take the knee, so I would feel unfair singling Mazepin out for that, and there are reasons through politics, country, whatever.
I think as well, just agreeing with Jim there, like it's up to the drivers to do it, but I think as well the trouble he has with that, until he does something consistently to prove that he's changing, if he does something like this, no one's going to believe he's doing it because he believes in it. It's just, oh, he's doing it to try and win us back, but he's not doing it because he believes in what they're doing it for.
Yeah, and the whole race, we races won, and as you're saying, the uncomfortable difficulties we've seen Mazepin in that video after the incident in December last year is the fact that F1 has always had that element of seediness with the old, when we had the grid girls, for example, and apparently the attitude in the old paddock, there was quite, sexism was quite rampant, and the sport was rife with problems like that, with certain people, women in the sport were quickly told, you stay away from that person because he's Mr. Gropey Hands, and you avoid those people. But I think we're in the 21st century now, and thank heavens equality is so much more important, and people are starting to wise up to how inappropriate and how out of touch those kind of attitudes were. I don't think it's entirely gone yet, but certainly most of the newer drivers we see coming through are from this newer, brighter, better world that I think the four of us certainly share and believe in. And Mazepin appears to be from that older world, which is the unacceptable one, and the one where people shouldn't be living and inhabiting anymore. So yeah, it's that horrible seeing him in these videos of where we're trying to promote we races one, and he's in there, is not ideal at all. And F1 should be doing more to make sure that we races one is not just a catchy hashtag, but is a reality.
It makes you think as well, with them having W Series racing on the same weekends as F1 this year, how comfortable all of those drivers are going to feel knowing that he's around there. It's like you don't want to have to, the whole point of it is that you don't have to purposely avoid parts of the paddock or whatever just in case something happens.
Absolutely, yeah.
It totally goes against the whole message they're trying to promote and say, oh yeah, we're all for this. Well, you say that, but then what are you doing about this one?
It's not just him, though, as I say. I mean, the old guard that are in the paddock as well. We don't want them to be, 20 female drivers come in and they're just like, oh, look, Totti, rather than actually 20 talented racing drivers joining the paddock, which is what it is.
Sticking on the track, Gareth, you mentioned the old school, and not to go on the age thing here, but you're the oldest one of the four of us here, and you've watched a lot of Formula One seasons with a lot of rookies coming in. Is he the worst? I don't think he's the worst. He's got some talent. I mean, I've seen worse drivers, but again, is he the worst of the current bunch? And is that being something that's particularly negative about him at the moment, that he is just so far off the pace?
I'm surprised, to be honest, how far off he is, because if you'd asked me before the season, I would have said to you, Mazepin is going to beat Schumacher this year, purely because I so think of Schumacher as being a two-season driver. Over the course of their careers, I'd fully expect Schumacher to absolutely wipe the floor with him. But on purely single season pace, I was expecting Mazepin to beat him. And the reason for that is that, away from the glitz and the glamour of the actual race weekends, he's got a private Mercedes F1 car, and he's pounding around the racetracks of the world on his own for God knows how many hours a day, getting to practice in. Okay, now he's come into the sport in the worst car on the grid, and he's got all the difficulties with the throttle delivery and stuff in that Haas is bloody awful. But that doesn't change the fact that he has got hours and hours and hours of experience in a hybrid F1 car. So
money can't buy your talent. Money can't buy your talent.
Well, no, but I mean, if you can make up for that with experience.
Well, you would have thought anyway.
But let's not forget, though. I mean, second in the karting world championship to Lando Norris in his final season of that campaign. He's won races in Formula 3. He's won races in Formula 2. As we said at the start, the guy does have some talent. Just, I would question. I mean, he's not Yuji Ide, as I said before. Yuji Ide came in and he was so bad that they took away his super license and got him out of the Super Aguri to stop him racing. He was that dangerous.
Jacob,
I'd just say there's definitely other drivers that are more deserving of that. So maybe he could have come along in 2022 and we'd maybe be looking at things differently because he had another year in F2 to try and claw his way back up a bit more from if fifth is where he was finishing last year, then third, second, maybe even first, have another year, calm down a bit, sort your stuff out a bit and both on track and off. And because there's plenty to be fixing there, and then maybe we would have thought of things differently. Because even if he brought money into the team next year, there would still be some criticism, of course. But if he'd then taken the year to, be Haas's reserve driver, test driver, do a bit of stuff with them, do some work where he's, at least on paper, it looks like he's trying to sort himself out and he's got some results to back it up, then maybe we'd be a bit kinder to him. But it's just the combination of all things for me. Maybe not the worst, like you're saying, Gareth. He's not far off the bottom either.
Yeah, and Lance Stroll gets. For all the criticism that Stroll gets, he seems like a humble, well-grounded individual. Yes, he's a billionaire's son, but he does seem to have. He knows who he is, and he knows how to be a nice person. And in comparison to Mazepin,
I'd say the bar was set pretty low, so Stroll was able to get over that one pretty quickly, I think, on being a nice guy. But at least, again, as you say, he doesn't draw any attention to himself, and he's been able to improve whilst he's been in F1. So
he's delivering, and he's got podium. The guy's quick.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to ask Jacob. Yeah, that's the thing, Jacob. I want to ask. You've got Lance Stroll, who has got pole positions, who has got podiums, but he's not 4 races into his career in Formula One. Mazepin, you said you had a bit of defence for him, but it's only 4 races, and I've got to stress that the guys, for all the reasons we've gone on, private testing, a bit of experience, money, the guy's only 4 races in. Do we think there'll be improvements of a sufficient standard before the season's out?
Well, put it this way, Jim. I think the improvements will come in a couple of races' time because I can't see him finishing Monaco and Baku, to be honest with you. But we'll see. I think that experience is key here. Time in the car will help him, and like Gareth said, he is getting hours and hours in a Mercedes car. By far the best car we've seen in the last 7 years. So I think we will see improvements from him, but he's got to improve quite a lot. 8 tenths is a lot to make up to your teammate. If it was 2 tenths, I could understand that. And I actually, with Gareth on this one, I actually thought because of the 2-season syndrome that Schumacher suffers in his career, I thought Mazepin would be there or thereabouts, and maybe even beating his teammate over the course of the season. But that is definitely not going to happen now. But if he can get within sort of 3 tenths by sort of Budapest and that summer break by Spa, then maybe he's made improvements. But that's a long way off at this point.
I also wonder even if he does improve with his driving, his future in F1, at the moment, I don't see him being able to get a seat anywhere other than Haas, because I think every other team will look and think, I don't know if I want to touch that just for the PR alone, never mind all the other headaches that would come with it. Yes, the money's nice and everything, but at least say if we go back to the Stroll example, he's just quiet and gets on with it and doesn't draw too much attention to himself, and then he improves over seasons and had a really good season last year. And you've got all of that there. Whereas with Mazepin, you think, I don't know if I want to risk that or not. And you've got to think Stroll's probably got a massive sigh of relief this season that all the attention's off him for a bit.
But now Williams have got the Doralton backing, for example, and Stroll's gone, saved Aston Martin, and there's a lot of money there. I can't really see another team anyway needing that sort of money to take that risk anyway.
No PR is bad PR, they say. I'm not so sure with the rap sheet of Mazepin if that would fly, and the social media hate has continued, and it's I will stress the irony of people participating in the blackout on the race weekend. Was it Portugal last race? Everything's blurred so quickly, but Mazepin also is a person who people are hating on, so there's a bit of hypocrisy from fans, I think, with regards to that. I think we'll have to wrap it up there, guys. It was been good because I know it's been a subject as we've been speaking F1 for the 4 races this season and beforehand that we haven't skirted the issue, or I suppose we've been focusing at the front. The Mazepin issue has been there, so it's nice, I think, for everybody to have vented a little bit to let off that steam. Question from me to wrap things up to all of you, and we'll go Jacob, Gareth, Thiemo. Will we see Mazepin finish ahead of Schumacher at all this season outside of any DNFs?
Maybe if we get like a wet race and Schumacher spins off but doesn't retire, maybe. But on pure pace, I can't really see it, to be honest. There might be one race over a course of 23 races. You've got to think, by chance, maybe one race, just by, luck of the draw, really, maybe. But I can't really see it. I'm going to say no.
Gareth?
Yeah, all things equal, no.
Thiemo?
So I agree. All things equal, no. The only place I could see it happen would be the Russian Grand Prix, but that would be probably team orders. So.
And a sniper in the grandstand shooting at Schumacher's tyres.
Wow, that bombshell. Right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us talking F1. We'll be back to normal for the next episode of Talking F1 when we will be dissecting the Monaco Grand Prix.